I woke up that morning expecting the crisp winter air, the smell of fresh pine, and the satisfaction of building a roaring fire in my living room. Instead, I was met with an empty space where my neatly stacked firewood had been the night before. At first, I thought maybe I was losing my mind. Had I miscalculated how much I had left? But no, just yesterday I had spent an hour stacking it perfectly, making sure it was dry and ready for the season. Now it was just gone. Not a single log remained. Someone had taken it. And not just taken a few pieces, they had wiped out my entire supply, right down to the last splinter. Annoyance turned to suspicion as I stomped back inside and pulled up the footage from my security camera. If some desperate raccoon had developed a new taste for firewood, I wanted to see it for myself. But what I saw on the screen was something far worse. There she was. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, the woman who made it her mission to control everything in our neighborhood. She wasn't even trying to be sneaky. Wearing her ever-present smug expression, she strutted up to my firewood pile in broad daylight, barking orders at some clueless neighbor who had the misfortune of crossing her path. With a grand wave of her hand, she gestured for two hired movers, who were apparently in on her latest power trip, to haul my wood into the back of a pickup truck. She didn't hesitate, didn't look around in guilt or hesitation. She simply took it. I felt a mixture of disbelief and fury settle into my bones. She hadn't even tried to hide it. No note, no explanation, no warning. She had just decided, on her own, that my firewood now belonged to the HOA. And the worst part? I already knew exactly what her excuse would be. She would claim it was some kind of violation, that my firewood wasn't aesthetically pleasing enough for her high standards. Or maybe she'd say it was a fire hazard, despite the fact that plenty of people in the neighborhood had the exact same setup. But none of that mattered. Karen made the rules, and Karen decided when to break them. Fueled by indignation, I stormed down the street, straight to her house. She had, of course, decorated it to look like the HOA headquarters, complete with an unnecessary American flag display and a mailbox so pristine it looked like it had been polished that morning. I barely had to knock before she swung the door open, already looking irritated, as if she had expected my visit and considered it an inconvenience. Before I could even get a word out, she put on her fake customer service smile. "Oh, Jake, good morning. What a surprise. What can I do for you?" "You can start by explaining why you stole my firewood," I said, crossing my arms. She had the audacity to scoff. "Stole? Jake, that's a rather strong word, don't you think? I merely repurposed it for the good of the community." I narrowed my eyes. "Repurposed it? Karen, that was my firewood. I paid for it. I stacked it. And now it's gone." Karen tilted her head, as if she were speaking to a particularly slow child. "Jake, you know as well as I do that the HOA has certain standards. Your firewood was unsightly. It was stacked in a way that, frankly, did not match the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. I was doing you a favor by removing it." I gritted my teeth. "Karen, it was stacked in my backyard. Nobody could even see it." She waved a dismissive hand. "That's not the point. The HOA's annual bonfire is coming up, and we needed extra firewood. Your pile was the closest and most convenient." I let out a humorless laugh. "So you're telling me you just helped yourself to my firewood because it was convenient for you?" Karen sighed, clearly already bored with this conversation. "Oh, Jake. It's just firewood. I don't see why you're making such a fuss. You can always get more." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. Karen had a way of making everyone feel like they were the crazy ones, like their perfectly reasonable anger was irrational. But I wasn't going to let her gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. "Fine," I said, stepping back. "If you want to play it that way, Karen, go ahead. Enjoy my firewood. But just know that you've made a huge mistake." Karen gave a condescending laugh. "Oh, Jake. You're always so dramatic. It's just firewood." I turned and walked away, already formulating my next move. Karen had been running this neighborhood like her own personal kingdom for years, bullying people into following her arbitrary rules. But this time, she had messed with the wrong person. She had taken from me, not just out of greed, but out of entitlement, believing there would be no consequences. I went straight to my garage, an idea forming in my head so brilliantly devious that I almost laughed out loud. Karen thought she could take what she wanted without repercussions? Well, I was about to show her just how wrong she was. My hands worked quickly as I dug through my supplies, pulling out the perfect components for my plan. A few hollowed-out logs, a bag of fire ants, tiny creatures with a bite that could make even the toughest person cry, and just enough patience to wait for the perfect moment. Karen had unknowingly declared war, and I had just the perfect way to strike back. I sat in my garage, staring at the hollow logs I had carefully prepared, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction brewing inside me. If Karen wanted to take my firewood without asking, then I would make sure she got exactly what she deserved. There was something poetic about it. She had taken from me under the pretense of community betterment, but now she was about to unknowingly sabotage herself. I reached for the small container beside me, carefully lifting the lid just enough to confirm that my tiny army was still active. The fire ants inside swarmed angrily, their little bodies twitching with energy, completely unaware that they were about to become an essential part of my revenge. I had spent hours making sure the plan would work perfectly. The logs looked just like the ones Karen had stolen, same size, same cut, same natural imperfections. But these were different. Each log had been hollowed out, with small entry points carved just deep enough to allow the ants to nest inside. I had tested a few to make sure they wouldn't escape until they were exposed to the heat of the fire. As soon as the logs started to burn, the ants would panic, swarming in every direction, and that was when the real fun would begin. The vision played out in my mind like a masterpiece. Karen, standing in front of the whole neighborhood, smug as ever, tossing my generous contribution into the flames, completely unaware of what was coming next. I stacked the logs neatly in a pile near the side of my garage, making it look as though I had simply gone out and replaced my stolen firewood. Karen was predictable, and I knew that the moment she saw fresh logs on my property, she wouldn't be able to resist helping herself again. It was a power thing with her. It wasn't about the firewood. It was about proving she could take what she wanted, whenever she wanted. She had done it before, and she would do it again. And when she did, I would be ready. The next morning, I barely had to wait. Just as I was finishing my coffee, I glanced out the window and saw her standing at the edge of my yard, hands on her hips, her signature scowl locked onto my neatly stacked logs. She didn't even hesitate. With the same audacity as before, she marched over, waving for her hired movers, directing them to load the wood into her truck, as if she were conducting a symphony. I could hear her self-important voice even from inside my house, barking orders about how this was necessary for the HOA event. I leaned back, smiling to myself as they drove away. Everything was set. Now all I had to do was wait. That evening, the neighborhood gathered at the HOA's annual bonfire event. Karen, as expected, stood front and center, basking in the attention of the residents. She had a microphone in hand, her voice ringing through the crowd as she went on and on about bringing the community together, and sacrificing her own time to ensure a wonderful event for everyone. She was soaking up the admiration like a sponge, unaware that her moment of triumph was about to become her moment of humiliation. The fire pit crackled with warmth as people gathered around, sipping hot cider and chatting. Karen, in her typical fashion, insisted on having the honor of throwing in the first log. She made a dramatic show of picking up one of the hollowed logs, holding it above her head like it was some kind of ceremonial offering, then tossed it into the flames with a flourish. The crowd cheered, the wood caught quickly, and for a brief moment everything was normal. Then the ants woke up. At first, it was just a few. Tiny, confused creatures, disoriented by the sudden heat, crawling their way out of the log in search of escape. But within seconds it was an